never could have imagined it would be this easy to find her after all these years.
Masamune was a kid who fell in love with a cold-hearted princess that deep-fried his fat-filled heart with a brutal rejection that made him develop an eating disorder and an addiction to tren. After becoming a self-obsessed, low-budget Arnold Schwarzenegger, the lonely simp who got rejected for being fat came back years later seeking to clap the princess. After admiring his steroid-pumped physique, Masamune, the narcissist, left for school, avoiding breakfast with his mom and sister after having a panic attack when he saw his mom's cooking. On his way to his new school, he practically rizzed some girls playing tennis with only his eyes. Luckily for him, his high school girls have a negative IQ and thought the creep was hot. Once he got to school, all the students were gathered to watch Yamada Shigeo get a love confession from who they called the Cruel Princess. The Cruel Princess showed up and exposed her suitor for being the king of creeps, aka king of Discord mods, who bought cross-dresser magazines and wrote trans fiction comics about himself online. The fact that his chest mole had more testosterone than him was also an issue that made him unworthy of the princess's love, as she needed a top G in her life. She dubbed him Moleo-kun and left him to wallow in public shame. His new school was already a nasty battlefront, worse than my kitchen when I'm cooking food, but Masamune came prepared, ready to slowly climb the ranks of his academy of dimwits, who didn't know the difference between a regular guy and a psychotic creep. While sinking his claws further into the half-brained girls in his class, the Cruel Princess paid them a visit. She was looking for Tanabe Akio, a barely 5-foot sack of fried donuts, that wrote her a love letter after seeing her drumsticks in yoga pants. She dubbed him the Pudding Prince, adding him to the pile of rejected boys she had annihilated with rejection. After leaving with Yoshino, her female butler, the girls told him that she was Adagaki Aki, a rich, cruel oppressor. Hearing that name sent him into shock. After getting information from Kojuro, the school's designated bum, he followed Yoshino, the princess's maid, to the school's storage locker where he found the feared princess, stuffing her face with enough food to feed a typical American household. She had an eating disorder in reverse and needed to become a human food vacuum to survive. He left satisfied after she made him keep the secret. He spent the following days unsuccessfully trying to become close to the princess who hated the male species. While going home, she sent Yoshino on a food hunt as she was about to pass out. While alone, she was attacked by the Pudding Prince who had come to take a pound of hair. Masamune used the situation to his advantage and got himself cut to save her, making his chances of clapping the princess more secure. When he was younger, he looked like baby Peter Griffin and got bullied for it. After being saved by a young Aki, he fell for her, but got his blubber-filled heart full of cholesterol crushed when she rejected him for being a beached whale. He swore vengeance and was in pure ecstasy that she was in his school. The plan was to make her fall for him, and then clap them peaches as payback. The next day, after putting on his hot boy act for the 500 megabyte processor-brained girls in his school, he found a letter that gave him a bad case of deja vu. Masamune, the ex-Peter Griffin, was having consecutive panic attacks in class. Everyone was a suspect. The thought of going back to being the local human Lizzo, despite his years of suffering under his grandfather, and going as far as getting his name changed, made his legs seize. He had to figure out who knew about his former life. At lunchtime, while his barbarian schoolmates were creating a stampede for food, Yoshino the butler came looking to get her boss's meal. She got knocked down and revealed her lemon-colored Under Armour and mini plain-flavored rice cakes to the panicking creep. Using the situation to his advantage, he helped her get the food and followed her to the storage locker where the food vacuum princess swallowed the food whole, after giving her servant the daily dose of humiliation affirmations. He came in after Yoshino left to get the princess some tea and used the opportunity to rule Aki out as the mystery stalker that had found out his truth. Yoshino came back with the tea and knocked herself out, once again putting her pre-puberty rice cakes on display. After the princess almost blinded him with food and let him have tea, he rizzed her up with the cheat codes he learned from his sister's manga series and got the bread-stuffed princess ready to throw him the keys to the box. On his way home, he was ambushed by Yoshino. The helpless Cinderella wannabe revealed that her family had served the Adagakis for 3 centuries. She was the unknown ex who had left him the message, but to his surprise, she didn't want to end his plan. She wanted to help him teach the cruel princess a lesson. The next day, he went on with the plan. It was time to get the princess's contact details. Knowing that he had 0 experience with the female species, just like a typical league player, he needed a test subject, and Futaba, the D-Cup class rep, was the practice dummy. He tried to ask for her details, but couldn't even pull that off. He ran away with his dignity in shambles to regain his fake confidence. Later that day, Futaba, who couldn't see the facade he had built, came to ask him to a movie date. Despite how appealing the idea sounded, he turned her down as Mission Aki was more important. After she left, Aki showed up to get a bucket as they were both in the school's beautification committee. Seizing his chance, He asked her out and asked for her number. After playing the missing phone trick on him, he told her to meet him the following week for a decision, foolishly believing that she was actually interested. After she sent him on a wild goose chase that led right back to the same spot, she was waiting outside with a rejection boldly printed out for everyone to see. Feeling defeated, his hopes came back when Yoshino walked in and gave him her contact details. Hey everyone, before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe button or prepare to be rizzed by the Rizzler. Due to the fact that the majority of the students were brain dead, the staff had a meeting and decided that they were all to take tests, and the students who failed were to take supplementary classes. Masamune was not bothered, as being a narcissistic trendhead had served him well in the academic department. Kojuro, on the other hand, was a nonchalant nut-brained dummy who barely made it into the school in the first place. Masamune decided to tutor the koala-brained class bum, who apparently had an abnormal fantasy about boys like Kojuro, was tweaking in her skirt when she found out that Masamune was going to tutor him. Later on, while he tutored Kojuro, he turned around to find the cruel princess tutoring Yoshino. The midget butler also had impaired brain function and needed tutoring. After expressing her shock about the fact that the ex-pig's foot could read a book and mocking him for falling for her games, he decided to place a bet with her. Whichever one of them tutored the dimwit with the highest score among Kojuro and Yoshino would be declared the winner. If Masamune won, he would take the cruel princess out on a date. If Aki won, she would give him a nickname that he had to wear around school forever while buying her food every day, feeling confident in Yoshino's support. Later that night, she called him and told him that he was on his own. He spent the following days kicking his tutoring and studying into overdrive after having a nerd face-off with Aki. He tutored Kojuro everywhere he could, even messing up his training split and missing several days' worth of gains, just to get in the extra study sessions. On the day of the test, after their last study session, he went to get drinks for both of them when he ran into Yoshino. She gave him a coffee and wished him luck before running off. Feeling optimistic, he went back to write but immediately felt the pain of monthly cramps. Suspecting that he was foiled by Yoshino and her drink, he stormed into her classroom after the test to give her a piece of his botched mind. He found Yoshino, who told him that Aki skipped school as she fell ill, which meant an automatic victory for him. His digestive problems were from the food his mom told him she was going to make the previous night. She had whipped up a side of expired eggs and almost put him and his sister in the ER. As his food poisoning had affected his test scores, he had to take the supplementary classes. His only consolation was the fact that Aki was also taking the classes with him. That weekend, he went to the station to meet Aki for their date. Yoshino had managed to set it up despite the fact that they technically had a draw. Once at the station, he found out that the cruel princess had come, trying to impersonate an early 2000s Disney princess. For some reason, she believed that women were supposed to wear costumes for a first date. Her looks attracted an experienced nerd who wanted pictures of the cosplayer for his personal collection. She escaped behind her date, who eventually called Yoshino, and found out that the cruel princess, who had never been outside the castle walls, took fashion advice from her maid, who had evil plans for her. When he poked the bear for coming on a date with him, she revealed that Yoshino had told her that he wanted to isekai himself after missing his test due to an extreme case of tummy toots. She was only there to keep him from jumping off a cliff. The desperate psycho decided to take the win regardless. They went to a movie theater where Aki had bought out the entire theater just to make sure the psychotic creep didn't sit next to her. After watching the most horrific zombie romance movie, she was paralyzed with fear, but still had space for food. As the princess stuffed her face, they were interrupted by a little girl who told the princess that her cosplay outfit was causing trauma. Aki ran away embarrassed. Masamune, who eventually caught up, assured the princess that the rumors were true. She ran into a boutique to change and knocked out the creep with a nasty right hook when he tried to peep into the changing room while she was in her pink royal Under Armour. After remembering how Aki was a ruthless little demon who constantly reminded him of his weakness, he remembered her being kind as well and woke up on her thighs. She was also asleep and eventually woke up and left. He called Yoshino as he somehow thought she was the reason he woke up on the cruel princess's thighs. Yoshino revealed that her reason for helping him was because she believed that Aki needed an intervention. After their call, a girl who looked like one of the maids in a Johnny Sins movie came out and asked Yoshino about her call, as she was surprised that the midget butler was having fun. Masamune had finished binge-reading dozens of romance mangas and felt he had come up with a foolproof plan to get the cruel princess to fall head over heels in love with him. During their next supplementary class sessions, he finally put his plan into play. He delivered a grade school Romeo and Juliet type play. The cringe and absolute lack of any sense of rizz that left his mouth made the princess dry up in places that couldn't get dry before. For some reason, the delusional nutjob felt he still had something left in the tank and gave Aki an umbrella as it was raining after school. Once again, his pickup line was more than enough to give the soaked princess an instant drying. Still being delusional, the clown ran home in the heavy downpour, feeling he had accomplished something great. He met Yoshino in the park later that night, and she revealed that Aki had become terrified of his creepshow activities and couldn't stop talking about how scary he had become. She told him to back off from the princess for a while and try being cold for once. The next day at school, after almost immediately breaking character and simping on the spot, he regained composure and gave the cruel princess the cold shoulder as she tried returning his umbrella. He continued snubbing her, and even stopped sitting beside her in the supplementary classes. He ran into her and almost broke character when she returned his energy. Yoshino stopped the desperate simp from ruining the plan. He left scared his great vengeance was failing. While he was walking through the halls, he was ambushed by Aki, who wanted to have a word. After trying to escape and getting choke-slammed with his tie, she asked him why he was ignoring her. Seeing a side of Aki he thought was non-existent, he didn't know what to do, and told her that he intentionally meant to make her jealous. She hit him with the great, "What do you like about me?" and he froze. She wasn't exactly the sweetest person and definitely had a wormhole for a belly. He ran away after essentially ruining his own plan with one sentence. His only hope of being saved at that point was Yoshino, who couldn't believe how stupid the creep was. She told him to leave it to her as usual. Deciding that he had to do something by himself for once, he wrote her a letter, and luckily ran into her as he was about to drop off the letter. He gave it to her to read, but she immediately trashed it, and told him that she was done with his childish stupidity and had already seen through his badly presented Romeo roleplay. She then ran off to the park alone, while Yoshino once again came to his rescue, as the incompetent creep who only knew how to lift weights was becoming more of a liability than an asset. At the park, Aki was a mental mess. This was the first time she had skipped school, and the fact that he was connected to it only made things worse for her. More importantly, she saw him with Yoshino at the park the other day and thought he was into dwarf nut-brained servants. Yoshino showed up and explained the reason she was with him in the first place. Learning that he actually liked her made her turn bright red, but she kept trying to play it off as she wasn't ready to let her guard down for a boy again. She had spent so much time becoming the cold princess to avoid getting hurt, and now she had to keep her act together. While walking home, still contemplating her emotions, she wasn't paying attention to the stop sign and nearly got run over. Luckily, Masamune, who had successfully tracked her down, saved her just in the nick of time. As they were about to taste each other's lip gloss, a girl from the car came out and threw herself on Masamune after praying to God. He might have liked the display of love, but he had no idea who the lady was. The mystery wannabe Reverend Sister kept talking about Masamune. They were once married, and he was stuck wondering if he had eaten some mushrooms on the way there by accident. Aki, on the other hand, looked like a hellspawn creature ready to rain down flames. The mystery girl left after her bodyguard summoned her. Aki left after telling the creep, who clearly had his claws in other rice cakes, to isekai himself. Meanwhile, the mystery girl's bodyguard reminded her of her status as a Fujinomiya and a promise she made to her father. The next day at school, he tried getting back into the cruel princess's good graces with food, but got drilled with an airsoft gun by the midget maid, who was also disappointed by the heights of his greediness and incompetence. She left after emptying her clips on him. After contemplating all the wrong ways their conversation could go, he simply left the princess's food outside the storage room. The next day, his eyes had heavy sacks under them as he couldn't sleep the previous night. Just then, a new transfer student came in, and she was the mystery girl. Her name was Fujinomiya Neko, and she immediately got a class fan base going. Masamune couldn't get a word in as everyone else wanted to know about her skincare and Botox prices. After losing patience, he decided to interrupt their discussion and found out that she had already told them that she enrolled to be with him. Apparently, 3 years ago during Christmas, she was out in the snow selling treats with no jacket on. He had put his jacket around her and left after dropping a pickup line that should be censored. He pulled her aside for a private conversation where he asked her why she was telling such lies. 3 years ago, he was still a chubby bag of organs and lived with his grandpa. He ultimately told her that he had someone else. She asked him to show her the competition, and he took her to Aki's class. She decided to take on the snow dragon. As the girls introduced themselves, one of Aki's classmates opened up the window and the wind came in, revealing that Neko had come with no holy armor on to protect her rice cakes. She went back to speak to Masamune, who was too focused on Aki. He chased after her as she left and tried to explain himself. After knocking out his creepshow hands, she slapped a teacher in the face and got them both sent to clean the pool. While there, she continued to deep fry his dignity and got him infatuated enough to spray her with the hose. She went to the tap and took off her uniform, revealing a swimsuit and a body that definitely looked like it had too much bread in it. She fetched a bucket of water to have her revenge, but forgot that actual physical strength was required to carry it. As she tried to command the desperate simp to come and receive accidental punishment, she fell into the pool. Seeing that her weight was too much for the water, she started drowning. He jumped in, but she had already managed to find the ladder. After she kept verbally assaulting him despite his effort to save her, he became tired of her games. Noticing this, she asked him to prove that he actually liked her. She wanted a kiss as proof of his feelings. Yoshino, who seemed to have started making gains in the melon department, was ambushed by Neko, who was looking for Masamune, and felt the stealth master would have an idea of where he was. Back at the pool, Masamune was still frozen in place as Aki's request for a smooch left him unable to move. This was meant to be his finishing move. He was meant to push her into the beach sand when she tried to come in for a kiss and reject her in the most brutal way possible. But here he was, being made to face the boss level way too early. After not speaking for a while, she decided to leave. Deciding to take his chances, he pulled her back and came in for the smooch. He imagined her face to be a block of ham. As he came in for what would be their first kiss, she gave him an uppercut strong enough to pull him out of the water. Before he could understand what had happened, the curvy class rep and some other students from the swim team had come along to swim. After explaining his situation, they left to practice, and Aki left as well, putting on her evil mask again and pretending like she wasn't about to explode. After his very confusing day, he sat on a bench to dry off, and Neko finally found him. She sat with him and offered him tea like a good housewife. He drank and finally came up with a solution to his Neko problem. After hearing her nerd up about supplements and vitamins, he asked her the same question Aki asked him, but to his surprise, she came ready. She claimed that she liked how modest he was, and asked him to stop being a pathetic wuss. After that, she left. Yoshino had decided to follow her as she thought Neko was dangerous. Neko didn't go with her bodyguard and was walking through town as though she had somewhere to be, and Yoshino followed her through every turn. Eventually, she lost her and got found out by Neko and her bodyguard. After unsuccessfully trying to play innocent, a lady met the three women and asked what they wanted. Meanwhile, Masamune was jotting down what Neko had said to him and planned to use it on Aki the next time. He came home and found his mom making shrimp with Neko and Aki and briefly lost his grip on reality. His mom had come home and met the girls outside their home. After seeing their uniforms, she practically forced them to come in. Masamune pulled Yoshino aside to his room to figure out what was going on and asked her to leave after hiding a picture of his fat boy days and letting her attempt curls. Neko came to call him to dinner, and he used the opportunity to feel her up. Chinatsu almost exposed him for being a former pigfoot who wanted to be an idol. After seeing the amount of food, he stripped off the fatty part, looking to reduce the food and avoid a relapse of his early years. Who was a pill enthusiast, had to start the dinner with her full pack of pills. Chinatsu noticed how similar the duo actually were. She suggested fireworks after dinner, and the girls agreed. After dinner, Chinatsu and Neko got into yukatas and started causing noise pollution for the neighborhood. Yoshino, on the other hand, didn't like fireworks. When she was younger, Aki strapped her to hundreds of fireworks and tried to shoot her into space. She survived but never forgot the trauma. While they had a watermelon eat-off, he wondered how things would have been with Neko if Mission Aki didn't exist. At the end of the day, Neko left after getting changed, and he walked Yoshino to the main road to get a cab, where she told him to not let Neko play him. Neko had snatched the picture he tried to hide earlier for blackmail purposes. His mom, who seemed to know Neko, was happy they had met again. They had finally finished up with their classes and were deciding where to go on a summer break. The designated bottom wanted to know where Masamune was spending his summer when Aki walked in and slammed a summer hangout proposal on his desk. He had asked her to hang out via a letter, and she was there to publicly reject him. She was going to a family island for the summer and invited Kojuro to come with her. The half-done man turned out to be reliable when he claimed that he would only come if Masamune was there, who couldn't resist the sight of the two boys on vacation, wanted to tag along as well. Neko, the obsessed pill enthusiast, was also coming with Masamune. While on the boat to the island, Yoshino told Masamune that if he didn't do something about Aki during the summer, she was going to expose the entire plan. Once on the island, they waited outside for Yuisaki, who was supposed to receive them. She was her father's double XL D-cup secretary. She was initially excited to see her master's daughter and some friends, but had a mood swing when she saw Masamune. She didn't consider Kojuro to be a man of any significance, and went on to interrogate Aki about her male companion. Seeing as he was now put in the hot seat by Yoshino, he took the opportunity and outed himself as Aki's boyfriend. Yuisaki seemed happy about this. She was glad that the spoiled princess had gotten over her hatred for boys and was ready to take the steps necessary to build some melons. As she currently looked like she only had the seeds of the melon, Masamune's plan paid off. Aki had a thing for looking good for women and didn't expose him in front of Yuisaki. She decided to play along for the summer break and maintain her image as a mentally stable teen for her dad's secretary. Yuisaki, on the other hand, had other diabolical plans for the wannabe son-in-law. Masamune experienced every gym bro's worst nightmare. He ripped off his shirt, expecting to get the girls soaked and drooling, but they couldn't care less about his insignificant existence. To top it off, the only person that cheered him on was Kojuro, which made everything with his already miserable life even more depressing. Neko came and threw her barely covered melons into his arm, while asking for his help with sunscreen. He had to escape the clutches of the melon master, as Yuisaki could have been watching, but his nature as an inexperienced creep who had a deep craving for such situations made him have an existential crisis. Aki came and broke up their unholy communion, and played the family name card on Neko to get her to back off. It was too late. as Yuisaki had already seen the heights of his despicable nature. After pulling him away, Aki made him fetch her food. He met Yuisaki in the kitchen and got the food. He asked her about things they could do for fun on the island, and she mentioned things like a bar and karaoke, which basically sounded like a Barbie tea party to the trend-filled gym rat. She came up with an idea to test their courage through fear, and he liked it. He left to deliver his princess's meal, and Yuisaki went nuts with excitement, as her plan of annihilation had been set in motion. Yuisaki had been hired as a secretary for her father years ago, and had just gotten dumped by a one-night stand when she came across a young Aki who was crying uncontrollably. When she asked her about the living stuffed animal friend she used to play with, she ran away, saying that he had left and wasn't coming back. Ever since then, she had become the slayer of men, and Yuisaki watched her metamorphosis proudly from the shadows. She liked how the twisted princess trampled on the desires of men, and couldn't bear to see her become a plaything to the likes of Masamune, the creep who had a smile that needed correcting. Their amazing idea was a haunted house trip. Masamune had set it up in order to make him be the one to rescue his bride Aki from the depths of hell, becoming her knight in shining armor and securing his victory. Yuisaki had other plans for the creep, and was ready with a reaper mask to scare the life out of him, and reveal his true nature as a scared wuss to the princess. Things went sour when the daughter of Jason Voorhees turned up and chased the D-Cup Reaper with a chainsaw. She ran terrified and traumatized Aki, Futaba, and Kojuro on her way out, fearing being isekai'd, and everyone finding out that she was a MILF with good genes. She ran into the woods and met Neko, who had ketchup spilling from her mouth after getting high on Percocets. She ran from the psycho and knocked herself out on a pole. She woke up on Masamune's back, and he told her the truth of his relationship with Aki. Hearing this made her hatred for the Trenhead creep subside. They made it back to the group, where Aki thanked him for carrying her, and he made her keep his confession a secret. On the way back after their vacation, Yoshino decided that she wasn't going to expose him, as his stunt with Yuisaki had saved him some time. Finally back home, Masamune returned to his steroid-pumping, self-obsessing routine. After his workout, he got a call from Aki. After spending a couple minutes scared of the call, he finally answered. She wanted him to come pick up his stuff. He met Master Yoshino in the park that night to discuss his success. She told him to be careful, as this was a never-before-seen occurrence that even she couldn't predict. Back at home, he decided to study, and found out that his childhood picture, the only proof of his past life as a midget Peter Griffin, was missing. The only person that could have taken it was Neko. The question was why. The next day, he met with Aki at a restaurant where she gave him his stuff while destroying every milkshake on sale. She told him that the only reason she came in person to deliver it was because Yuisaki made her do it. Aki was asking him about a pool hangout that Futaba had planned for them the next day, but Masamune was distracted, trying to figure out why Neko had taken the picture. Feeling ignored, walked out on him, leaving him to pay for the all-you-can-drink buffet she just finished. While he kept thinking about Neko, she called him to also ask about the pool, and he used the opportunity to ask for a meetup as she was home alone. This was the perfect chance to have some alone time with the Melon Master. When he got to her house, she started making tea for him. He asked for the bathroom and decided to use the chance to snoop through her things to know exactly what he was up against. Once he fell on a bottle of pills and saw a mini drugstore, he knew he was in the right place. He found an insane collection of romance mangas, some identical to the ones he read at home. While he read one, she snuck up from behind and whispered into his ear. She told him that she bought the manga after seeing them in his room, unconsciously exposing herself for sneaking into his room. He decided to ask about the picture, and she pulled it out from the depth of her melons. He asked her why she took it, and she claimed that he looked cute as an obese potato sack. He was shocked that someone thought that version of him was cute and didn't know how to respond. The fact that someone like her thought that he had always been cute felt too good to be true. She told him that looks were only an aspect of a person, and didn't capture their true nature. As he had been clearly enchanted by her words, he didn't notice that she had locked fingers with him and was giving him the first smooch of his pitiful life. He initially pulled back, trying to take in what he had just experienced, but the enchantment was too strong. She pushed him onto the bed to continue their bonding exercise, and he couldn't stop her. As she came closer, he thought about what she said and felt bad. Her comment on his looks not being a big deal didn't make sense. She didn't experience the bullying he did. She wasn't the town's local oink master. She didn't get used for her dad's money, but he did. This was what made his current revenge mission meaningful to him. He got up after taking a closer look at her, and noticing that despite looking like she wanted him, she wasn't giving the same energy she usually did. She asked him if he was choosing Aki, and he said yes, leaving her crying on the bed while his belly flipped on itself, as this was all uncharted territory for him. The next day at the pool, he looked like the Grim Reaper had visited him, and noticed that Aki was upset, but couldn't care less as he was about to go through the most awkward day ever. Neko took a rain check. He spent the day sulking while Aki was pretending to eat like a normal person. At the end of the day, she was stuffing her face with ice cream in secret while he caught up with Yoshino, who wanted to know why he was acting weird. As they walked home, they were stopped by Shidu, Neko's bodyguard. Apparently Neko had gone missing, and she knew that he came over the previous day. They thought she had gone out, but Shido explained that her drug addiction was actually because she was sick and had left all without her medication. Masamune told Shido what happened between them. The self-absorbed narcissist thought his confession would stop the earth from rotating, but was ignored by all parties involved. They decided to split up, with everyone going in the car with Shido and Masamune going alone. They went into stores in town looking for cool locations where a sick person without a phone would stay but couldn't find her. After hearing from Yoshino, Masamune decided to head to school, as that was the only other place Neko knew on her own. Once there, he ran into Aki, who also had the same idea. Aki claimed she felt bad for Neko after he rejected her, which was why she was helping. The cruel princess didn't like it when people were rejected by love. This pissed off Masamune, who asked her if she remembered his childhood nickname. He got distracted by a paper plane that came from the roof and ran into the school after seeing what it was made of. It was from the Rose-Eyed Steroid, a manga where the girl isekais herself after getting rejected. He managed to reach her in time. Luckily, she was too lazy to complete the story and was happy he came. She passed out in his arms and Aki went to call Shido. At the hospital, after she got better, she asked for Aki, after which she sent for Masamune, who was debating whether turning down the rich, heavy melon Neko, who actually liked him, was a good choice. He got to her room and they had a very long conversation. Neko had been diagnosed with her condition very early and had always been treated like a living caution sign by her juniors in school. She was meant to go overseas for surgery, but wanted to experience love first. Masamune was one of her potential suitors she had randomly chosen to pursue. He was likely put on the list by his midget mother. She was grateful to him for the experience and asked if he was going to keep following his hollow revenge plan. He left the hospital looking like he had just seen a ghost and didn't even respond to Aki. After they all left, she held on to a childhood photo of her and Masamune when they were very young and were made to take a picture together with their families. On his way home that night, he became hell-bent on fulfilling his revenge mission. Aki went out to her garden to think about what Neko told her about Masamune's love and why she was still acting tough and rejecting it. She became confused, unsure of whether or not to like him. She reminisced on her time torturing a young, fat, tire-bellied Masamune and felt that being with that obese kid who cried all the time was true love. The currently fit, narcissistic Masamune was heading out to retrain himself and remove weaknesses so he could accomplish his goal. Back at the garden, a stranger approached Aki. When he stepped out of the shadows, he looked like a version of Masamune that skipped the trend-filled glow-up and claimed that he was, in fact, the chubby kid she was dreaming about. Gasuo Kanetsugu was the 17th generation of the Kanetsugu family and was betrothed to Aki. He had come to give Yoshino's father a letter proving his claim to Aki's hand in marriage. The sun rose on the steroid-addicted narcissist who had finally completed his training. The next day in school, a male student who spent the break in a tanning bed showed up and made his move on Aki. She decided to start the new session by branding him the Melon Master. This opening ceremony pleased her subordinates Kikune and Sonoka, who gave her a welcome presentation. Another subject named Mari had a different opinion of the cruel princess. She revealed to the rest of the tribe that Aki had lost her touch. Secret intel of her island getaway with Masamune had been leaked, and Mari had all the details. Aki was losing her grip on the throne, and the girls could feel it. They tried convincing themselves otherwise, but then Gasuo the fatty pulled up. They thought the princess was going to add him to the pile of slain men, but she left with him to help him with his transfer documents, leaving her subjects in disbelief. They figured out that Aki had become a lover of the Flabs, which was why she turned down countless fit, beefed-up prospects, but easily accepted the short, life-sized gummy bear. Masamune, on the other hand, was ready to lay waste to the female species and destroy Aki along the way. He was surprised to see Neko back in school. She went for her surgery during the month-long break and came back as she was still technically a student. She asked for his progress with Aki, and he used his training excuse to cover up for his incompetence. Seeing Aki and Gasuo outside, she warned him of his chance being stolen, but he couldn't believe that a fatso could steal his shine. He went to give Aki a gift he bought her, and met the two lovers chatting together. After Gasuo introduced himself as Aki's betrothed, Masamune ran away with Yoshino. After interrogating the midget butler and forcing her to give him a peek of her rice cakes as punishment, she explained that Gasuo was legit and was living with them at Aki's house. He spent the following days closely observing the human gummy bear. It turned out he was a short, plump kid who was comfortable with himself and had no problem making friends. Yoshino herself couldn't understand the princess's actions anymore and apologized to the helpless Masamune. Aki's subjects went to have lunch, and Gasuo came to meet them. They almost took him out, but he was there to ask for their help with something. Back in school, Futaba held a meeting in class for their festival class project. They all wanted to do a Snow White play with Kojuro, as Snow White and Masamune as the prince. Masamune was too obsessed with Aki's new love interest to debate the decision. He later ran into Aki and used the wall slam to get her attention. He was foiled by his open fly, and she escaped with her chubby prince. Her friends, who were watching in secret, decided to help Gasuo. The chubby prince claimed that despite being betrothed to Aki, he had no intention of touching her as he viewed her as a precious goddess. They decided to support him as they knew Masamune was a psychotic creep who wanted to defy their great queen, and Gasuo was a wuss who couldn't picture such an act, who was the student council president, decided to cancel Masamune's class's play, as Aki was also doing the same play with Gasuo, while Futaba went to get a second opinion when she found out. Masamune decided that they were to have a drama off to let the viewers decide their princess and prince. He pulled Gasuo aside for a personal battle with the winner getting exclusive rights to dance with Aki. With the festival around the corner, both classes were heavy on practice. Futaba had become a Stan Lee wannabe who demanded perfection, and her intense directing chased Queen Kojuro away. He ran into Neko, whom he had started to crush on, and decided that he needed to act like the man he was born to be. Meanwhile, the two princes went at each other's throats, with Gasuo leaving the wall, slamming Creep 2 and taking notes on Riz. Gasuo walked home with Aki, and she stopped to get some food. Gasuo finally revealed his true motives. He was actually broke, but could somehow afford to be stuffed with fried chicken. After hearing that he looked like Masamune, he used it to his advantage and came to trick the cruel princess. He purely wanted to find a way to afford all the grub he could ever want. Later that night, while working out, Masamune caught a cold and got wrapped and slammed by his overprotective mother. The next day, the festival kicked off, but he couldn't take in the festive spirit, as he decided to climb his roof in underwear the previous night to prove that he was healthy, and ended up on the brink of death. Neko, who was an expert in hiding sickness, noticed it and took him to the clinic to rest. Meanwhile, Aki was getting her chest stuffed as she didn't have the natural assets to fill up her gown. As the girls dressed Gasuo, who was a closet creep, barged in on them for a peek and got assaulted by bags. He then followed Snow White's witch to get dressed. At the food stands, Kojuro ran into Neko and put on a testosterone-draining performance, trying to get her to like him. When they went back to Masamune's room, he had vanished. They told Futaba, and went into search and rescue mode. Masamune was wrapped up again, but this time it was by Kikune who put in a hidden room. Meanwhile, Kojuro told Futaba that Aki's class was also having issues. Gasuo was missing as well. After the witch, who was actually Yoshino, led him to Aki's lunch spot, she locked him in. Back in his new prison, Manasume's acting skills had failed him, and Kikune revealed why she was a brain-dead bodyguard for Aki. Aki had turned down a wannabe swordsman who defeated Kikune in middle school by cheating. That event made her a loyal servant. Using her story against her, he told her that Aki wouldn't be proud that her bodyguard had stooped so low to secure a win. His mind games won, and she set him free. Mari called her and asked to speak with Masamune. She asked about Gasuo. When Masamune realized that it was likely Yoshino's doing, he played dumb. This new situation meant that his victory and dance with Aki were secured. Aki, on the other hand, decided to do the play on her own without Gasuo. She was going to blaze the stage with girl power. After Kikune learned about Gasuo's disappearance, she chased Masamune out of a window and fell into the pond as he tricked the samurai wannabe. After meeting up with Futaba and Kojuro with high hopes for their victory, they told him about Aki's plan, and he ran off to the theater. He got to the theater and found Aki on stage, gracefully playing her part with the rest of the cast. He acknowledged how much work they put into their play, which was no match for the kindergarten tea time dress-up Futaba had planned. Aki had encouraged her classmates to put on a good show, despite missing the prince, and it was playing out well until the time for the kiss. Manasume decided to help them out, and tried looking for Yoshino to release Gasuo, but she was on stage playing a dancing dwarf. With no other option, he went to the dressing room and came out as the prince. He had managed to convince Marie to let him help them. He couldn't let their expensive setup go to waste, but as he went on stage, his fever kicked up and nearly made him pass out. The dwarves who noticed it helped him up while playing it off as a part of the play. After a final push from Yoshino, he was beside Aki. The thorns were stabbing her, and she wanted him to get the pretend kiss over with. Masamune had other plans. He pulled the dead princess in and stuck his fever-cooked tongue down her throat. She knocked him out again with her right hook, and the dwarves once again played it off as part of their Gen Z Studios production. The rotten-brained students clapped in excitement, as they wouldn't even know a good play if it hit them, and were satisfied watching their school's top stars tonguing each other. The two teams had met up at a party room that they both booked as they each expected to win. They ended up with a draw, and decided to settle things with a karaoke sing-off. As they all performed beautifully, Masamune ran away when his turn was close. He was ambushed by Mari and Kikune, who knew he had the voice of a frog and wanted to run. Luckily, Aki was there to stop her bodyguards. When they got back, Aki and Neko performed their favorite song together, but still couldn't get a handshake in. It was finally Manasume's turn. He picked up the mic, and a couple minutes later, the whole group had died from ruptured eardrums. They were saved by Yoshino, who managed to call for help. They all ran home to get treated, and he stayed back with Aki, who was waiting for Yoshino to get her the family-sized pizza for a side snack. He used the opportunity to get a thank you from Aki for the last time he helped her. After asking for what he wanted, he asked for a kiss. She accepted and almost gave him his wish, but once again left him after stuffing his creepy fever breath mouth with one of the snacks Yoshino had bought. After they left, he swore vengeance again and prepared himself for a second round.